Every person who journeys through this life carries countless dreams and lofty aspirations. Some wish for a complete home. Some long to find perfect love. Others simply desire a life of peace. Even on the most exhausting days, we still hope that with just a little more effort, happiness will draw closer. Yet, when we slow down a beat to look deeply into life, we suddenly realize that all the things we cling to, all the things we consider important, are in fact as fragile as the morning mist that comes and goes with the wind. This world, no matter how many changes it undergoes, is merely an inn, and humans are just travelers, pausing briefly on the long, indefinite journey of birth and death. There are days we believe we have everything, but then just a small incident is enough to shake our entire life. Those with high power and status cannot take a single letter of their title with them when they close their eyes. Those who amass piles of silver and gold will also only lie down in a small grave, no different from those with empty hands. There are couples who just yesterday shared a meal, but today are separated by life and death. There are people who were chatting vibrantly this morning, but by evening have fallen silent with their last breath. Life is encapsulated in a single breath. An inhale means existence. If an exhale is not followed by another breath, everything becomes the past. That's why it is said that life is a transient realm. People come together by karmic connection and part when that connection ends. Every encounter is a gift. Every separation is a natural part of human existence. However, most of us only truly understand this theory after experiencing significant losses. We place heavy importance on things that are inherently temporary. Some cry endless tears over an unfulfilled love. Some sacrifice their health to chase after status. Some view a few words of judgment from others as a lifelong burden. Some live half their lives endlessly striving for superiority, only to finally realize that all those struggles don't grant them a single night of peaceful sleep. Try to look back and see if any of the things you once clung to truly have the power to keep your mind at peace. Suffering comes and goes like a storm. Joy comes and goes like the morning sun. Only mindfulness helps us navigate this life gently. So, a simple yet profound question. Why do people, the longer they live and the more they experience, increasingly see life as just a transient realm? It's because the further one walks, the more one witnesses loss and gain. The more mature one becomes, the more one realizes that fame and fortune cannot hold anyone back, and money cannot buy even one more breath. How many people tried to accumulate so much, only to eventually realize that the most precious things are simple meals, sincere words of care, and moments lived fully, without fear of tomorrow. Understanding that life is a transient realm is not about becoming pessimistic or giving up. On the contrary, it is an awakening that helps us live more deeply in the present moment. Impermanence does not come to threaten us, but to remind us to cherish what we have. When we realize that all things are temporary, we learn to open our hearts to the present, to love ourselves more, and to love others more. We stop complaining and nitpicking about trivial things. We understand that if someone leaves, it's not to punish us, but because the karmic connection has run its course. A day we can still breathe is a day to be grateful for. A smile exchanged is a gift. A handshake, a word of thanks, a peaceful evening with loved ones, all are precious. From this realization, we step into the main topic of this journey: living with acceptance. To find inner peace is not about passively submitting to fate, but about aligning with the flow of karmic connections. We don't force life to conform to our will. We simply learn to live mindfully through every change, so we are not swept away by greed, anger, and fear. When we understand that life is a transient realm, we see that peace does not lie in how much we possess, but in how much we can let go of. And from here, we continue together on the journey to rediscover peace within this fragile, transient world. There are times, amidst life's ups and downs, we sit back and wonder why people are always tired. Why do we constantly chase after desires, only to be heartbroken when we don't achieve them? Why are there sorrows that seem endless, and losses we thought we'd forgotten that still sting our hearts every time we think of them? If we look deeply into the root cause of these things, we will find a truth that the Buddha taught millennia ago: impermanence. Everything we touch in this world changes every minute, every second. No form exists forever. No emotion is constant. No relationship is guaranteed to remain as it was in the beginning. Impermanence is like the water flowing beneath our feet. One moment it's clear, the next it's muddy from an upstream rain. Impermanence is like the clouds in the sky. When we look up, they are a solid white mass, but in just a few breaths, they dissolve into thin air. Impermanence is like the last leaf of the season, swaying in the wind. Just as we reach out to catch it, it falls to the ground. Many people hear the words impermanence and immediately think it's something sad, like a reminder of death or separation. In truth, impermanence is not meant to frighten or make us pessimistic. Impermanence is the reality of all things. It is because life changes that people mature. It is because life transforms that we learn to cherish the moments we have. If everything stood still and unchanging, if people never aged, if landscapes never shifted, life would become a static painting, devoid of joy, lessons, or transcendence. Impermanence is the first lesson of a human life, for only by clearly understanding the changing nature of life can we learn to live more gently, to share more, and to no longer cling to the things that cause us suffering. Many people have asked why we must speak of impermanence when life is already difficult enough. In fact, precisely because life is full of challenges, we need to clearly see the changes of all phenomena so as not to be drawn into the whirlpools of suffering. The Buddha taught that all suffering originates from clinging. We cling to our bodies and fear when they age and sicken. We cling to loved ones and despair when they leave. We cling to jobs and fame and are pained when we lose our position. We cling to things we mistakenly believe will be ours forever, but are in reality as temporary as the clouds in the sky. When our heart clings tightly to something, our mind immediately fears losing it. From that, anxiety arises. From that, unease comes. From that, storms of the soul continuously rage without end. Therefore, impermanence is not a warning. Impermanence is the medicine that cures the suffering caused by clinging. The channel Buddhist Teachings with Impact once heard a saying that pain does not come to destroy people, but to awaken them. Suffering can sometimes be the beginning of enlightenment. Many years ago, I witnessed a woman whose story stayed with me as a reminder of impermanence. It was early morning, the air still cold and the city still asleep, when her phone suddenly rang. Seeing a familiar number from a family member, she thought it was probably just a minor issue. No one expected a 3 a.m. call to be a bolt from the blue. The voice on the other end, choked with emotion, reported that her father had passed away from a stroke. Just a few days before, father and daughter had argued over a very small matter. But now, all the apologies she wanted to say had become too late. When she returned home, she saw her father's slippers neatly placed in the corner, and his half-eaten bowl of rice from yesterday, not yet cleared. The fan her father had turned on before going to sleep was still gently rotating. She then understood that impermanence arrives faster than people imagine. All plans from yesterday had dissolved into nothingness. The words she intended to say today no longer had an opportunity. The presence of a person in life is sometimes as fragile as a lamp in the wind. When she saw her father's empty room, she broke down in tears. Before that, she had thought she had plenty of time to be with her father. But no, time never waits for anyone. Impermanence gives no warning. Impermanence doesn't announce its arrival. It comes like a sudden, late-season rain. It arrives abruptly to awaken people from the delusion of attachment, anger, and indifference. From that day on, she changed completely. She no longer fought to win arguments, no longer clung to things that exhausted her. She learned to see everything with calmer eyes. She said, "My father passed away, but my greatest loss wasn't his body, but the moments I wasted when he was still there." She said that pain made her appreciate every breath. She realized that waking up each morning and seeing her loved ones in the house was a blessing many people don't have. She was grateful for her mother's footsteps passing by her room. She was even grateful for simple meals where everyone was present. Impermanence makes people more mindful in their compassion. Impermanence makes people realize they should embrace what they have instead of wishing for distant things. The Buddha taught that anything with form is impermanent. People are born, then age, sicken, and die. Relationships begin and can also fade. Anger arises and then subsides. Sorrow, thought to be endless, will also dissipate. Joys and sorrows, gains and losses, meetings and partings are like the tide rising and falling. When we deeply understand this, we will no longer see life as a heavy burden. We know that everything is changing, so we no longer adopt an extreme attitude when bad things happen. A sorrow today will not last for the rest of our lives. A failure does not mean the end of life. Someone's criticism cannot fully evaluate our worth. All are just fleeting waves. As long as our mind is not swept away, no matter how big the wave, it cannot drown us. Some people only appreciate their breath after a loss. Some only realize each morning's awakening is a gift after a serious illness. Some only understand that a loved one's smile is the most precious thing in this world after a farewell. Life sometimes has to use pain to awaken us, because if it only used gentle words, we might not listen. Impermanence is a strict but kind teacher. It doesn't appear to make us despair, but to open a door for us to enter awakening. When people face loss, they realize the fragile nature of everything around them. They realize that no one can hold on to anything forever. They realize that the only thing we can do is cherish the present and live deeply each day. A Zen master once said that human life is like water flowing through the palm of your hand. No one can hold on to it. The harder you try to hold it, the faster the water slips away. Only when you release your hand can you feel the cool freshness of the water. Life is like that, too. The more we cling to something, the more we suffer. The more we want to hold on to a person, the more we fear losing them. The more we try to hold on to an emotion, the more uncomfortable we become. The more we cling to a pain, the more it controls us. Impermanence teaches us that to navigate life's changes, the most important thing is not to hold on, but to know when to let go. Letting go is not giving up. Letting go is knowing how to distinguish what belongs to us and what doesn't. Letting go is to lighten the heart. Letting go is to open the mind to new things. When we look at life through the lens of impermanence, we will see that every person who appears in our lives is like a cloud drifting across the sky. Some stay with us for a long time, like autumn clouds gently drifting across a clear, calm sky. Some merely pass by in an instant, like a cloud swept away by the wind. Some come to teach us a lesson about love. Some come to teach us a lesson about hurt. Some come to make us realize the value of appreciation. Some leave to help us understand what it means to let go. Then we no longer try to hold on to anyone. We will know that those who truly want to stay will stay. Those who have a karmic connection with us will be by our side. But those who do not belong to us, no matter how hard we try to grasp them, will still leave like a wilting leaf carried away by the wind. Impermanence makes us understand that every encounter is a karmic connection, and every separation is the natural course of life. The Buddha once said that a human birth is difficult to obtain, the Dharma is difficult to hear, and the opportunity for awakening is difficult to encounter. So, whenever we face impermanence, let's see it as an opportunity to return to ourselves. Instead of complaining about life's unfairness, let's ask ourselves how we have used our time. Instead of dwelling in regret over a past relationship, let's ask ourselves if we loved sincerely. Instead of being angry because someone didn't treat us well, let's ask ourselves if we ever held too many expectations. When we view every event through the lens of impermanence, we will no longer blame, but only feel lightness. We will know that no one owes anyone anything. We meet because of karmic connection, and we part when that connection ends. We can complain, but we cannot hold on. We can be angry, but we cannot change anything. The only thing we can do is cherish what is present before our eyes. One day, when our mind sits quietly and looks back at life, we will see that impermanence is not as terrifying as we once thought. It is impermanence that has helped us mature. It is impermanence that gives us the lesson of gratitude. It is impermanence that makes us slow down and love more deeply. When we clearly understand the nature of impermanence, we will walk more lightly through life. We no longer see suffering as an enemy, but as a teacher. We no longer see loss as an end, but as a crossroads for us to change. We no longer try to hold people back, but let them go with a light heart. We no longer view success or failure as a measure of our self-worth, but merely as stages of a journey. Then we realize that life has been light all along. Only our mind was heavy, making us perceive life as heavy. Impermanence does not make people weak. Impermanence makes people know how to truly live. When we know that time flows like a stream and never returns, we will stop waiting for something perfect before daring to live. We will love when we still can. We will call loved ones when we miss them. We will apologize when we realize we were wrong. We will forgive those who hurt us so our hearts can be at peace. We will eat meals fully without rushing. We will walk slowly to feel the wind on our face and the sun on our shoulders. We will cherish every moment of simple life. There is a saying in the scriptures that the Buddhist Teachings with Impact channel values deeply. All conditioned phenomena are impermanent, like a dream, like a flash of lightning, like the morning dew. When we clearly see this, our mind no longer tries to hold on to things that don't belong to us. We will live with acceptance, and living with acceptance is not giving up, but living in harmony with the flow of life. When the karmic connection arrives, we open our hearts to receive it. When the connection ends, we smile and let go. Living with acceptance is living brightly amidst impermanence. Living with acceptance is knowing that what needs to come will come, and what needs to go will go. But whether it comes or goes, we maintain a kind and sincere heart. Then peace will find us naturally. Our mind will be as still as a morning lake. Even if the wind blows, it will only create gentle ripples before returning to stillness. Human life is a journey, each event a stop along the way. Every person we meet is a fellow traveler. Every pain is a lesson. Every joy is a gift. When we have traveled far enough and seen enough, we will understand that impermanence is the foundation for us to learn to let go of suffering and move towards serenity. Don't wait until you are in pain to awaken. Don't wait until you experience loss to appreciate. Let impermanence become the lamp that lights our consciousness every day. Then we will see that this life, though a transient realm, can still be lived beautifully, deeply, and peacefully. There are times in life when people keep walking down a path thinking it's the only way to happiness. We get caught up in chasing goals, conquering challenges, trying to become a version that society expects. Then, suddenly, one day, life gently places a soft hand on our shoulder, not with a harsh blow or a warning, but just a small incident or a very ordinary moment that we never anticipated. And at that precise moment, we stop. When this pause occurs, whether we want it or not, a new door begins to open in our consciousness. That door is named awakening. Awakening is not noisy. It doesn't create a grand fanfare. It's silent, like the sun beginning to rise behind a mountain range. Its light just enough to illuminate every dark corner within the human heart. All profound transformations happen in such silence. Those who have gone through loss, through fear, through the setbacks of human destiny, will all understand that sometimes the most painful moments are precisely when the most important truths are revealed. Truths that we have long fled from or unintentionally forgotten. In Buddhist teachings, awakening is the ability to look directly at reality. That reality might be filled with things that make us choke up, but when we dare to face it, we will see that pain does not come to defeat us, but to stir the deepest part of our heart. There are seeds of understanding, seeds of peace, seeds of transformation. For those who awaken, those seeds sprout. For those who remain engrossed in the noise, those seeds lie dormant in the darkness. Humans have a very strange habit. When happy, we take it for granted. When in pain, we complain that life is unfair. When work flows smoothly, we think we are talented. When we encounter failure, we blame circumstances. We rarely stop to look within. The human mind is like a lamp in the wind, constantly oscillating between desire and fear. When we allow ourselves to be swept away by life's pushes and pulls, we inadvertently lose the ability to listen to the truest voice within us. And then an event occurs. It comes like a wake-up call. It forces us to stop. It forces us to look within ourselves. This pause might come from loss, from illness, from emotional hurt, from unexpected decay. In many everyday stories, the Buddhist Teachings with Impact channel realizes that awakening never comes when people are complacent. Awakening often enters our lives when the heart has just suffered a shock, not as a punishment, but to guide us to another level of understanding. A woman once said that she never truly felt the pulse of life until she went through the long night of losing her child. A successful man said he never knew the value of a breath until he faced the fragile boundary between life and death during a stroke. Awakening always comes in such a way, without fanfare, but powerful enough to change everything. There's a story I always remember, the story of a young mother who lost her 5-year-old child in a traffic accident. This mother had always lived very fast, always busy. Busy with work, busy with family. Life always rushed her along like a torrent. She always thought her child was young and just needed to eat and sleep well. Occasionally, she'd scold her child for being naughty, for scattering toys everywhere, and for not eating on time. These were very normal things in any family's life. One day, while at work, she received a call. That call was the boundary between two worlds. It reported that her child had been in an accident on the way home from school. The mother rushed to the hospital in a panic. When she saw her child lying motionless, her heart seemed to stop. All sounds became distant and blurred. The mother collapsed, her mind spinning with the question of why life was so cruel. She thought she would never be able to get up again. In the following days, the house, once noisy with children's laughter, became eerily silent. Toys remained on the shelf. The shirt her child wore the day before still hung on the hanger. The tiny pair of slippers sat by the door, as if the child had just stepped out for a moment. The mother looked at everything, her heart aching. The pain so intense she could barely breathe. At times, she would sit for hours by the window, gazing at the sky, asking herself what human life was that it could be so fragile. All plans for the future suddenly dissolved like smoke. All the days ahead became empty. One day, an acquaintance advised her to visit a monastery to calm her mind. The mother didn't believe such a place would help her find solace, but being utterly desperate, she decided to go. She sat in the temple courtyard, not saying a word. The deep, warm sound of the temple bell seemed to touch something in her heart. She watched golden leaves falling in the wind. Leaves fell, and the wind carried others away. No leaf remained on the branch forever. She saw the nuns sweeping the courtyard very slowly, each brush stroke as gentle as if caressing the ground. The mother was assigned the task of picking up leaves in the temple's back garden. It was a simple job, but it brought her to a state of calm. Each leaf she picked up was like a forgotten thought she had held for too long. She began to realize that the pain hadn't vanished, but it was softening little by little. When her mind was placed in stillness, she saw more clearly that life is inherently impermanent. People come and go according to their unique karmic connections. No one can hold on to anyone. Understanding this, she no longer blamed life, but began to learn to embrace her pain with gentleness. The pain no longer choked her, but became a lesson that helped her see the fragile nature of human existence. Another story comes from a successful man. He was the director of a large company, traveling between many countries, with a packed work schedule from morning till night. No one knew he only slept 3 to 4 hours a day. He believed that with just a little more effort, he would achieve even bigger goals. After each successful project, he didn't allow himself a day off, but immediately started a new endeavor. His family always hoped to see him at meals, but that rarely happened. He lived under pressure, yet he considered pressure an inevitable part of being successful. One morning, while presenting to the board of directors, he suddenly felt his head spin. A second later, he collapsed right in front of everyone. The stroke came as fast as a knife cutting through reality. When he awoke in the hospital, he saw his wife holding his hand, her face gaunt from many hours of sleeplessness. He saw his young daughter crying, her tears falling onto his hand, heavy drops. It was the first time in his life he felt the warmth of his family more intensely than any contract he had ever signed. A doctor told him he was very lucky. For just a few minutes slower, he might never have woken up. Those words were like a mirror, reflecting his entire life. He saw how much he had missed. He clearly saw the days he chased success, forgetting that his body was just a small boat in the vast ocean of life. When that boat ran out of strength, all goals became meaningless. After being discharged, he decided to spend time on things he had previously considered trivial: walking with his wife, having breakfast with his children, personally tending to the plants in his garden, sitting quietly to listen to the birds in the early morning. He learned to notice each breath and realized that the ordinary breath we often take for granted is, in fact, life's most precious gift. He said that the stroke helped him awaken. It made him stop and see what was truly important. Interestingly, both the mother who lost her child and the man who had a stroke shared a common point. They didn't change their lives immediately at the moment of the event. The change only began when they dared to look back, dared to confront, dared to step into the silence. In that silence, pain was acknowledged, fear was released, and long-held anxieties were faced directly. The Buddha taught that suffering does not come to destroy people, but to awaken them. When suffering arrives, it knocks on our heart's door. Those who open the door with understanding will step into a new life, Those who tightly close it with resentment will only make the darkness in their heart thicker. In the scriptures, the Buddha taught that people truly mature only when they learn to reflect on themselves. Awakening is not a superhuman state, but a deep realization of the nature of life. Life is impermanent. The mind is impermanent. All emotions arise and cease like water flowing under a bridge. When we clearly see this, our heart also lightens. We are no longer swept away by desires, no longer submerged by fear. We know that everything will pass. Both happiness and suffering are like waves. When a wave comes, let it come. When it goes, we will see the water clear again. Awakening is not just intellectual understanding, but an inner transformation. A heart that knows how to pause will see the path more clearly than a heart that constantly chases after noise. Awakening helps us know what we are doing with our lives. It helps us place ourselves in the correct position within the flow of karmic connections. It gives us the calm to not rush after life's pushing winds. When we awaken, we are more grateful. We cherish simple things that we once took for granted. We feel the presence of loved ones as a precious gift. We know that as long as we can still breathe, still see the sky, still hear the voice of those we love, that is enough to live a meaningful life. The mother who lost her child, after months at the monastery, returned to life with a more peaceful heart. She didn't forget her child, but she no longer let the pain turn her into a desperate person. She began to participate in volunteer activities for poor children because she wanted to give the love she once had for her child. She said that when she saw underprivileged children smile, she felt her own child smiling with them. In that pain, there was a sense of relief. In those tears, there were seeds of love. The pain did not disappear, but was transformed into compassion. The man who had a stroke spent much time sharing his story with young people. He said that if he could turn back time, he would choose peace first, and then success. He no longer considered his career the measure of his self-worth. What made him feel most peaceful now was simply sitting in his small garden, leaves touching each other, and seeing his loved one smiling beside him. He realized that happiness was never far away, but always right beside him. But before, he hadn't been mindful enough to see it. These stories remind us that no one can avoid suffering in life. Suffering is the first truth in the Four Noble Truths. But when we know how to view suffering with the light of awakening, suffering can become a gateway leading us to understanding. What's important is not how many challenges life brings, but how our mind confronts those challenges. A chaotic mind will turn any event into a storm. A mindful mind will find a way, even in the midst of a storm. The most beautiful thing about awakening is that it doesn't demand anything grand. We just need to know how to stop. Stop to breathe. Stop to listen. Stop to clearly see what we have gone through and where we are going. When we stop, we realize that life is not overly complicated. The things that exhaust us are often created by our own minds. When we learn to let go of desires, let go of comparisons, let go of fear about the future, the mind naturally becomes open. We live slower, understand ourselves better, and love ourselves more. After understanding this, try to take a moment to place your palm on your chest and feel the heartbeat occurring every moment. You will realize that life is present within you in a very simple way. Your breath is also entering and exiting regularly. Your body is still functioning to sustain you. Just noticing that much is a very important step on the path of awakening. Because awakening is not something distant, but the ability to return to the present and clearly see life unfolding. Life is a transient realm, so awakening helps us live more fully. Life is impermanent, so awakening helps us not lose ourselves in unimportant things. When we know that everything changes, emotions, people, relationships, wealth, we stop trying to hold on to what doesn't belong to us. We learn to accept. Acceptance is not giving up, but opening our hearts to go with the flow of life. That flow will take us where our heart needs to be. If one day you feel life is too heavy, remember that by simply pausing for a moment, you will see that the darkness in your heart is not something immutable. It is waiting for you to light a lamp of understanding. When that lamp shines, all fears will naturally dissipate. Awakening is that lamp. And once the lamp within you is lit, you will know how to navigate this life with a peaceful heart. There are days when life is like a gloomy afternoon. The sky suddenly fills with gray clouds, the wind picks up in gusts, and the rain pours down without warning. Each of us has gone through such afternoons in our minds. Some try every way to escape, to shield themselves, to try not to get wet. Some are terrified by sudden thunder, by things that don't go as planned. But when we live a little longer, experience a little more, we gradually understand that life isn't always sunny and warm. This rain is just here to meet another rain. Facing a gust of wind now doesn't mean there isn't another gust waiting for us behind. And then one day, we suddenly realize something even more valuable than avoiding the storm. That is learning to stand still in the midst of the storm. Some people think serenity means no more suffering, no more failures, no more storms. But in reality, serenity has never been the absence of suffering. Life is impermanent, and impermanence means constant change. A person who knows serenity will no longer flee from changes, but will know how to stand firm within them. It's not about not feeling pain, but feeling pain and still keeping a kind heart. It's not about not being overwhelmed by difficulties, but knowing how to remain calm amidst things that overwhelm others. It's like the ancients often said that a bowl of water only becomes clear when you stop stirring it. If you keep stirring, no matter how clear the water originally was, it will become cloudy. The human mind is similar. The more you resist, the more you try to push away what you dislike, the more tangled your heart becomes. But when you stop, take a deep breath, and accept that some things are beyond your control, your heart will naturally settle down like the sediment in a bowl of water. Among the teachings left by the Buddha, there is a core point that is repeatedly emphasized. Human suffering largely stems not from circumstances, but from the mind wanting circumstances to conform to its will. When things go smoothly, we feel at peace. But that is only a temporary peace, because it relies on external conditions. When life takes a different turn, when rain and wind arrive, we immediately lose our balance. At that moment, we see how easily our heart can be swept away like a dry leaf. And it is from here that the Buddha taught that true serenity begins when we no longer need everything to go our way. This is not giving up, nor is it surrender. It is the maturity of a soul that knows how to observe, how to settle down, how to view life with more compassion. The human mind naturally tends to want certainty. Everyone wants a peaceful life, a secure future, unchanging love, a stable job. But the older we get, the more we realize that nothing in life can be held onto forever. People come and go. Events happen and pass. Moods change. The things we try to cling to sometimes only increase our unease, just like when we tightly hold a handful of sand. The tighter we squeeze, the more sand slips through our fingers. Some things can only truly be kept when we know how to relax. Serenity is when we open our hearts, not clinging, not forcing, not tormenting ourselves over things that don't belong to us. Long ago, an old Zen master, seeing his young student confused by life's troubles, gently said, "Do not wish for the wind outside to always be gentle, for the wind is a matter of the sky. The only thing you can do is maintain a space of stillness within yourself. Serenity is when you no longer need everything to go your way. For when the mind is vast enough, all matters, whether adverse or favorable, are merely like the wind touching the surface of water." The Zen master didn't say much, but his words remained like a lamp, guiding us through the darkness of days when the mind feels adrift. To clearly see what serenity is, there is a very ordinary story that many still remember. One rainy morning, in a small corner of the market, an old vegetable seller sat huddled under a makeshift awning. The rain was so strong that his old clothes were drenched. A young woman stopped to buy some vegetables, shielding herself from the rain and clearly showing her impatience. She looked at the old man with concern, asking why he didn't pack up and go home. "It's cold sitting in the rain like this," she said. The old man just smiled kindly and replied, "Let it rain. Just keep your heart from storming." He said those words so lightly that the wind could have carried them away, but they were enough to make the girl silent for a long moment. Because what made him peaceful was not that he wasn't tired or cold, but that he accepted the truth that rain is a matter of the sky. He didn't blame the rain, nor did he blame his hard life. He simply kept his heart from raging. That is a kind of peace that only those who have experienced Buddha in life can attain. That saying is also like a bowl of water that is cloudy simply because it has been stirred. When we stop stirring, the water naturally settles. The human heart is the same. When we stop demanding that life conform to our will, we realize that peace is not something found out there, but something we cultivate within ourselves. A lotus flower blooms in the mud because it doesn't reject its environment. It accepts the mud, absorbs the mud, and from the mud, a pure flower blooms. People who want serenity also need such a process, not rejecting suffering, but using that very suffering to understand themselves better, to cultivate more compassion, to mature. Buddhist teachings say that when the mind is at peace, the environment is at peace. Often, we ourselves make the environment turbulent because our hearts are already turbulent. An angry person will find everything goes against their wishes. A sad person will find everything heavy-hearted. An anxious person will feel the whole world is about to collapse. But when the mind is clear and still, everything becomes lighter. That is why in the Four Noble Truths, it is said that the root of suffering is attachment. Attachment is not just affection, but also clinging, wanting everything to go the way we desire. Once we reduce our clinging to these expectations, we will naturally find our hearts more at peace. The lesson drawn from these simple stories is not for us to be passive or submissive, but to understand that the true strength of each person lies in the ability to keep their mind stable. A heart that knows how to settle down will see things more clearly. A person who knows how to stand still in the storm will no longer fear the storm. And a person who knows how to smile at adverse circumstances will no longer be a victim of circumstances. When we understand that everything external is merely clouds drifting across the vast sky of our mind, we will no longer worry too much about change. Clouds come and go, but the sky remains vast, just as life changes every day. But if our heart is calm enough, it will maintain its serenity. Applying this to daily life, we can start with very small things. When encountering something undesirable, instead of reacting immediately, slow down your breath a little to allow emotions to settle. When someone hurts us, instead of letting anger lead the way, look within to see what you are clinging to. When circumstances push and pull, instead of panicking, remind yourself that some things cannot be controlled. The only thing you can control is how you face them. Just like the old vegetable seller, we cannot choose whether it rains, but we can choose our expression amidst that rain. After all, we gradually understand a simple yet profound truth. Storms belong to the sky, but peace belongs to the heart. Serenity does not come from life treating us gently, but from us treating ourselves gently. No longer striving for superiority, no longer trying to force everything into a mold, no longer letting our heart drift with the waves. When the mind is sufficiently awake, life naturally reveals itself. When the heart is vast enough, all undesirable things are merely like a fleeting rain shower on the house. And it is then that we truly understand the value of the two words, serenity. It's not about running away, but about standing still. It's not about ignoring, but about accepting. It's not about being indifferent, but about being clear-minded. A serene person is one who can sit in the midst of a storm and whose mind remains as still as a calm lake. A serene person is one who can smile no matter how life changes. And a serene person is one who understands that peace cannot be sought externally, but must be cultivated within one's own heart. There are moments in life when people look back and see that they have traveled a long way, but their heart no longer has much strength to continue. Everyone has, at least once, fallen into the feeling of standing at a crossroads. Every path seems hesitant. Every direction causes hesitation. When young, we think life must always move forward, like a stream that is never allowed to flow backward. But the older we get, the more we realize that life is not just about moving forward. Sometimes it also requires stopping. Sometimes it requires returning to oneself to understand what we truly want, what we truly need for the remaining years. Sometimes stopping makes us feel like we are losing ground, as if we are falling behind. But then one day, we suddenly understand that knowing when to stop at the right time is also a form of progress. The Buddhist philosophy of impermanence teaches that everything changes. People change, emotions change, circumstances change. Even the things once considered most stable sometimes falter. Life never promises anyone that we will always be right, always strong, always lucky enough to overcome challenges. Sometimes breakdowns occur precisely when we think we are safest. Sometimes the things we have cherished for so long suddenly disappear in a single day. But it is also thanks to impermanence that we have the opportunity to start over. If life were immutable, perhaps our mistakes would also be immutable. If life didn't change, perhaps the pains we carry would never be healed. Some people fear starting over because they think starting over means failure. They view returning to the starting point as something shameful. But in reality, the scariest thing is not starting over, but not daring to start over. Some people live their entire lives in torment simply because they cannot forgive themselves. They carry regrets, old mistakes, unfinished words, and push themselves into an invisible cage. But that cage is not created by anyone else. It is built by themselves with guilt and self-blame. Therefore, the first step to starting over is not to earn more money, not to find a more stable support, but to learn to forgive oneself. In Buddhist teachings, karma is spoken of not to induce fear, but to promote understanding. Karma is not punishment, but the natural result of what we have sown. When we understand karma, we know that the past is only one part of the flow of our life. It is not a sentence, but a lesson. And any lesson can be used to move forward. Starting over is not erasing the past like deleting a line of text on a page. Starting over is picking up that page, looking at the places where you wrote wrong, smiling, and saying that you will write a new chapter with more understanding. In reality, people's suffering when faced with starting over often stems from three things. First, the fear of others' judgment. Second, the fear that they cannot do it. Third, the fear of having to admit that they made a mistake. But these very fears are the barriers that prevent us from moving forward. People who cannot forgive themselves often carry an invisible burden on their shoulders that exhausts them. They want to fix things, but often the very feeling of guilt makes them weaker, until they realize that forgiveness is not forgetting mistakes, but looking at them with kinder eyes. When we look at ourselves with compassion, not with resentment, we have enough courage to change. There is a story that the Buddhist teachings with Impact Channel has heard many people recount with emotion. A man in his early 50s had lived almost his entire life through undesirable events. He once had a family with a small house and the sound of children's laughter. But that marriage could not be saved, even though both had tried many times. After the divorce, he was disoriented for a long time. A part of him seemed to collapse, as if the things that had long sustained him suddenly vanished. At that very moment, he lost his job, leaving him almost penniless. There were nights he lay looking at the old ceiling, feeling his life was like a finished movie, with only a black screen remaining. But then one morning, when the city was still hazy with mist, he decided to return to his hometown. There, he found the old garden left by his parents, a garden overgrown with weeds, dry, and cracked earth, but also something that seemed to be waiting for him to return. He started by pulling out clumps of weeds, one by one, bending down, standing up, then bending down again. The first beds of earth were cleared, just as he slowly removed the heavy burdens from his heart. He planted a few rows of vegetables, watching the tiny seedlings sprout from the ground. This made him feel the rebirth not only of the garden, but of himself. In those days of gardening, he found himself calming down, no longer trying to prove anything to anyone. He didn't need resounding success. He didn't need anyone's praise or support. He just needed a soul brave enough to live differently. As he watered the vegetable plants, it was as if he was watering his own life. As he picked yellow leaves on a quiet afternoon, it was as if he was picking up the broken pieces of himself and arranging them into a new order. He understood that starting over was not a grand endeavor. It didn't require abundant money or anyone's pat on the back. It only required enough patience with himself. One afternoon, watching the sun gradually set behind the trees, he suddenly realized that he had forgiven himself some time along the way. He no longer tormented himself over his old marriage, no longer blamed himself for past mistakes. He only felt grateful that life had given him another chance, an opportunity to live slower, to be true to himself, to start over with greater understanding. The Buddha once taught that among the 3 most difficult things in human life, conquering oneself is the hardest. Conquering oneself here doesn't mean self-infliction or striving for perfection, but overcoming the fear within one's own mind, overcoming the self-blame that weakens us, overcoming the afflictions we still harbor in our hearts because we refuse to let go. The Dhammapada says, "No enemy can harm us as much as our own ill will, but no one can help us as much as the wholesome mind we cultivate." Forgiving oneself is the beginning of that wholesome mind. From the story of the man in his 50s, we understand that a garden can flourish again after months of neglect. So too can a human being. A soul once riddled with wounds can still shine when cared for properly. A life thought to be broken can still stand firm if we lay down old grievances and walk with awakening. That lesson reminds us that every morning brings a new opportunity. No one can go back to the past to start from scratch, but everyone can start over from this very moment to create a different ending. Applying this to daily life, we can begin by looking at ourselves with gentler eyes. Instead of asking, "Why did I make a mistake?" ask, "What have I learned from that mistake?" Instead of blaming yourself for not being good enough, look at how hard you tried. Instead of thinking your life has reached a dead end, see it as a sign to change direction. Practice forgiving yourself like tending to a new seedling, gently, patiently, and with abundant love. Don't force yourself to change immediately, because all rebirth requires time. The most important thing is that you chose to keep going. One day, when you look back, you will see that the things that once broke your heart were precisely what made you grow. Things that seemed like an end actually opened a new path. And the you of that day will be grateful to yourself for being brave enough not to give up, for choosing to start over when everything seemed closed off, for believing that no mistake is too big to diminish the opportunity to be a better person. And then we understand a simple yet profound truth. Every morning is an opportunity to renew our lives. As long as we are patient enough with ourselves, compassionate enough with our stumbles, and brave enough to move forward with understanding. Life is still a transient realm, but precisely because it's temporary, every moment is precious. And precisely because it's precious, every time we get up and start over, we give ourselves an immense gift. That gift is called freedom. Freedom from the past, freedom from blame, freedom from fear. A soul that knows freedom will naturally be at peace. There are evenings when we sit quietly, watching clouds drift across the vast sky, so immense that no one can measure it. We then realize a very simple yet profound truth. Encounters in this life are often as fragile as the moment wind touches a cloud. It's not that the wind wants to hold on to it, and can, nor that the cloud wants to stay forever and will. Everything follows the law of impermanence that the Buddha taught. Whatever arises will eventually change. People suffer because they find it hard to accept change. But life continues to operate in its own way, like a river in summer, sometimes clear, sometimes muddy, but never ceasing to flow. When we understand impermanence, we suddenly feel lighter, no longer stubbornly clinging to things that don't belong to us. When a connection arises, we welcome it. When a connection ends, we bid farewell with a slightly sad but serene smile. That is something that a mature person will eventually learn. When speaking of karmic connections, Duyan, many immediately think of love. In fact, there are many kinds of connections, but love is what makes us most vulnerable, because the human heart, when it loves, is often as tender as a young leaf. We are ready to hold a hand, even knowing we cannot hold it forever. We try to cling to an image, even knowing that person has gone their separate way. Some blame themselves for loving too much. Some blame life for bringing someone who couldn't stay. But in Buddhist teachings, nothing comes to make us suffer, but only to teach us some lesson. The human problem lies in our unwillingness to accept endings. We believe that if love was once beautiful, it must continue to be beautiful. We believe that if someone promised to stay, they will stay forever. But happiness is not a contract, nor is it an object we can possess. The Buddha taught that all emotions arise from conditions, Duyan Hoi. If they arise from conditions, they will also depart when those conditions cease. What causes us pain is not the departure itself, but the expectations we placed upon it. The more we wish for something to last, the more heartbroken we are when it dissolves. When facing separation, the human mind often feels like holding a hot cup of tea. When we first pick it up, we feel warm, comfortable, familiar. But as time passes, the tea cools and fades. We still try to hold on to that cup of tea just for the memory of its initial warmth. Sometimes, people cling to memories rather than the person in front of them. When feelings are gone, we still remember the beautiful things that once were, and keep thinking that with a little more effort, things can return to how they were. But once tea cools, it cannot heat itself up again, and love won't return just because we wish it to. This mindset causes so many people to torment themselves, to agonize that they weren't good enough, didn't try hard enough, didn't love enough. In truth, sometimes the problem isn't whether we are enough, but that the karmic connection between two people has simply reached its end. The one who leaves first is not at fault, nor is the one who stays behind to be blamed. It is simply that the journey of two souls has reached a turning point, and each person needs a different path more suitable for their own growth. This is something that, if one truly understands it, will make their heart as light as smoke and clouds. Among the stories of karmic connections, perhaps the story of a girl named Cam Yen is the most beautiful example of the lesson of letting go without losing anything. Cam Yen worked at a small tea shop by the road, a place where mornings were just warm enough with sunlight, and afternoons were as gentle as a peaceful classical tune. She had been accustomed to making tea since she was very young, as it was her family's trade. She was skilled at every movement, from pouring water and regulating temperature to discerning the color of tea leaves. As soon as the water touched the leaves, it all became part of her breath. Those quiet days continued until a young man came to the shop, not because he loved tea, but because he liked the quietness of the table by the window, where the light slanted through just enough to see dust motes dancing in the air. He usually ordered only one type of tea and always sat in the same spot. Gradually, though unspoken, a quiet connection formed between them. A nod when they met, a small smile when she placed the teapot on his table. Occasionally, their eyes would meet, enough to make the young woman's heart flutter. Then their feelings grew naturally, like a young plant meeting the sun, without fanfare, without promises. They were just two young people who loved each other in a gentle and pure way. In those days, when she made tea, her hands would often tremble slightly, knowing the person across the table was waiting. He was the same. Just seeing her from a distance made his heart feel strangely at peace. But life is not always smooth. His family did not approve of their relationship due to differences in their circumstances. On the day they parted, it was raining lightly, and the tea shop had few customers. He came and sat in his usual spot, while she stood behind the counter, her heart as heavy as morning dew. No one blamed anyone. There was no anger or resentment, only a fragile sadness that felt like it would dissolve if touched. He offered an apology. She nodded and placed one last cup of tea in front of him. This time, she brewed it very slowly, carefully watching the water, as if wanting to preserve every moment. When he stood up to leave, the bell on the door chimed a very small sound. That sound seemed to cut the air. In the days that followed, Cam Yen continued to make tea as usual. But each time she poured water into the pot, she remembered her mother's saying, "If the water boils too long, the tea becomes bitter. If you wait too long, the tea becomes diluted." Love is the same. If you try to hold on when the connection has run its course, feelings will become a burden. But if you let go a little sooner, perhaps both will preserve the beauty of what once was. Each time she remembered him, she neither avoided it nor lingered on it. She just smiled, as one would when remembering someone who had passed through their life with kindness. She understood that just because they couldn't be together didn't mean their love was meaningless. On the contrary, some people appear only to teach us something, and then leave so that our lives can continue to expand in a different direction. Their karmic connection was sufficient, so the encounter was enough to become a warm memory rather than a pain. In Buddhist scriptures, there's a saying that all encounters in life are formed through many lifetimes. A karmic connection, duyan hop, forms when conditions are sufficient for two people to cross paths. A connection dissolves, duyan tan, when those conditions no longer exist. Nothing disappears naturally. It's just that the connection has run its course, like a lamp about to go out, because its oil is depleted. The end is an ending, but not an ending due to anyone's fault, but because the nature of all phenomena is impermanence, so nothing can be held on to forever. The Buddha taught that what makes people suffer is not change, but resistance to change. A person who accepts impermanence will naturally have a peaceful heart. A person who stubbornly tries to hold on to what cannot be held is like trying to hold a handful of sand. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips away. From Cam Yen's story, the greatest lesson is perhaps knowing when to stop at the right time. Love, when it comes, is a gift. When it leaves, it is also a gift. If we know how to look at the truth with eyes of understanding. If the karmic connection is sufficient, we stay. If it ends, we leave. This may sound sad, but it is a truth that helps people mature. We don't necessarily have to forget someone to call it letting go. Sometimes letting go means remembering, but no longer feeling pain. It means thinking of them, but no longer wishing to return. It is a remembrance with a matured heart, no longer filled with blame or regret, but only gratitude for what once was. The end of love does not diminish us. It only teaches us to love ourselves more and to open our hearts wider to life. And most importantly, each person needs to learn how to deal with karmic destiny with a peaceful mind. When you understand that an unfulfilled love doesn't mean it was meaningless, you will stop hurting yourself over what is past. When you know that not everyone who leaves makes you more lonely, but sometimes they just give you more space to meet the right person, you will see that their departure is also a kind of blessing. When you see that not every connection is meant for a lifetime, you will learn to cherish fleeting, yet profound moments. And when you understand that letting go is not forgetting, but allowing your heart to lighten, you will realize you can still love, but without the pain you felt before. If you are suffering from love, try to sit down for a bit. Create space for yourself to breathe deeply, and then look back at your journey with eyes of understanding. Ask yourself, what is causing your suffering? Is it because the other person left, or because you don't want to accept the truth that the connection has ended? When you look directly at this, the sadness will gradually dissipate like the morning mist. Let everything return to its rightful place. Those who need to stay will stay. Those who need to go will go. And you need to learn to move forward. When brewing a new cup of tea, remember that good tea isn't about holding on to it for a long time, but about knowing the right moment to enjoy it. Love is the same. Being sincere in the moment that belongs to you is enough. There is a truth in life that everyone must face. The tighter you hold a bundle of thorns, the more your hands will bleed. Many people don't suffer because of the thorns, but because they refuse to let go. Some don't suffer from loss, but from constantly holding on to what cannot be salvaged. Life is like water flowing through your fingers. The tighter you close your hand, the faster the water slips away, leaving a greater sense of emptiness. When speaking of impermanence, the Buddha does not teach us to be indifferent or resigned to life, but teaches us to understand that everything changes. If we understand the inherently dynamic nature of life, we will no longer try to cling to what no longer belongs to us. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting everything, but learning to accept that some things need to stay and some things need to move on along their own path, so that the mind is no longer a lamp swaying in the wind simply because of a memory or a sorrow. We need to learn the art of letting go from a Buddhist perspective. Suffering begins when the mind refuses to let go of things whose karmic connection has ended. Suffering does not arise naturally, but arises from attachment. Someone who suffers from betrayal doesn't suffer from the betrayal itself, but from repeatedly replaying that image in their mind. Someone who loses a loved one doesn't just suffer from the loss, but from constantly blaming themselves, thinking, if only I had done something better. Someone who fails at work isn't just wound up about missing an opportunity, but because they constantly recall the moment they stumbled. All these things accumulate into a heavy burden, making it difficult for the human mind to look up. In Buddhist scriptures, it is taught that clinging is the source of suffering. For the more you cling, the more you fear losing. The more you cling, the more you compare. The more you cling, the more you hurt yourself. Letting go is not running away, but realizing what needs to move forward and what needs to stop. Letting go is clearly understanding the nature of truth, not trying to forget, only to have the heart ache at night, as if a cold wind blew through it. The human mind often likes to hold on. No one wants to lose something that once made them happy. When we love someone, we believe that love will follow us forever. When we trust someone, we think that trust will never waver. When we place expectations on something, we hope that life will conform to our will. But that mindset is like walking on a sandy road and trying to pick up every grain of sand and put it in your bag. The more you put in, the heavier it gets. The heavier it gets, the more exhausting the journey becomes. Sometimes we don't realize that holding on too much is what makes us lose our freedom, making our minds weary. Some people live as if imprisoned by the past. They constantly torment themselves, asking where they went wrong, what they lack, why the other person treated them that way. These questions don't bring answers, but only deepen the wound. The longer a wounded person holds on, the more they suffer, just like holding a bundle of thorns. Tighter makes them bleed more. But strangely, they believe that if they let go, they will lose a part of themselves. While the truth is that only when you let go can your hand feel light and your heart breathe again. There is a story often told in talks about letting go. It is the story of a woman who experienced the pain of betrayal. Her husband cheated on her and left with someone else. The day she found out, the sky darkened, the wind outside howled, and the windows rattled in rhythm, as if her heart was sinking with them. She sat alone at a small wooden table, feeling as if her whole world had just tilted. From that day on, the pain clung to her like a shadow. She reread every message, examined every detail, trying to find where she had gone wrong. She held on to that pain like a bundle of thorns, thinking that if she didn't keep it, she wouldn't be able to overcome it. But the more she held on, the more she deteriorated. Every morning she woke up. She remembered old conversations, promises that once warmed her heart. She questioned herself, blamed herself, and then blamed life itself. She became thin, her eyes sunken. Her loved ones watched in pain, but didn't know how to help her escape that whirlpool. One afternoon, when she visited a temple at a friend's invitation, a monk told her the story of the bundle of thorns. A person embraces a bundle of thorns, believing that the tighter they hold it, the safer they will feel. But in reality, the tighter they hold it, the deeper the thorns pierce. When that person cries from the pain, they hold it even tighter, thinking that letting go is failure. Letting go is admitting they have been hurt. But only when they put down the bundle of thorns will the bleeding stop and their hands can heal. The woman suddenly burst into tears upon hearing this, not because the story was so painful, but because she recognized herself in it. She had been clinging to her pain like a bundle of thorns, not daring to release it. She held on to the past as if it were a condition to torment herself. It was only when she saw the image of the bundle of thorns in the hand of the person in the story that she understood that the pain would only end when she herself let go. She looked at her hands, imagining she was releasing an invisible object, and in that moment, she felt her mind lighten a little, not completely, but something had loosened. Through many days of sitting with herself, she gradually realized that a handful of stones cannot pick up flowers. A mind filled with hatred cannot have space for peace. A mind heavy with the past has no room for the present. She understood that letting go is not erasing all memories, nor denying what happened, but looking at the truth with a mindful eye. The person who betrayed her, that was the truth. The marriage ended. That was the truth. But she could choose whether that truth continued to hurt her or helped her grow. The day she decided to forgive, it wasn't forgiving the person who hurt her, but forgiving herself for being foolish, for clinging to what no longer belonged to her. She wrote a letter, not to send, but just to release what she had held on to for so long. In the letter, she thanked her ex for teaching her to love herself, for teaching her that not all love lasts until the end of the road. She finished writing and put the letter in a wooden box. That letter didn't turn all her pain into joy, but it transformed her pain into a lesson. That evening, she slept much more peacefully. In Buddhist scriptures, it is taught that suffering does not come to punish, but to remind us to return to ourselves. The more one suffers, the more one seeks liberation. And liberation is not found externally, but by returning to observe one's own mind. Sitting still and looking at emotions is a way to clearly see what is hurting us. When we observe without judgment, sadness softens. When we sit quietly and breathe slowly, a turbulent mind will gradually become calm. The ancients said that breath is the thread connecting body and mind. When the mind is agitated, the breath is rapid. When the breath slows down, the mind naturally settles. Therefore, letting go begins with the breath. Each day, just a few minutes of sitting still. Watch your mind as you watch clouds drift by, without judgment, without forcing it to be better. Just observing. We will realize that emotions, like clouds, nothing stays forever. From the Buddha's teachings and the story of the woman holding the bundle of thorns, we understand that letting go is not a sign of weakness, but of wisdom. A strong person is not one who holds on to much, but one who knows how to release things to walk lightly. A person who knows how to let go understands that no one can walk far with hands full of stones. If we constantly hold on to pain, we will have no room for happiness. If we tightly cling to sad memories, we will inadvertently miss the beautiful moments of the present. Letting go is not because we stop loving, but because we want to love ourselves more. After all, this life doesn't require us to win or lose against anyone. Life only requires us to walk with a peaceful mind. If you are carrying a bundle of thorns in your heart, perhaps it's disappointment at work, an unfulfilled relationship, a family sorrow, or just a mistake that torments you, give yourself a chance to let it go. Try to breathe slowly. Inhale deeply to know that you are still alive in this moment. Exhale gently to know that you have the right to release all burdens. Write a letter to yourself or to the person who hurt you. You don't have to send it. Just write to unburden yourself. As you write, you will see that the things you have held onto for so long are actually just shadows. Sit still and listen to your heart. When you dare to look directly at your pain, you will see it is waiting for you to say, enough. And when you let go, you will wonder why you held on so tightly for so long. The day your hands are free of thorns, you will find you can pick a new flower. That could be a new joy, a new dream, a new opportunity, or simply the peace you spent too long trying to find. There are times in life when we feel so tired, not because of too much work, not because we have to carry great responsibilities, or because our life runs endlessly, but because in our hearts there are too many things that have never been let go. People often say that the backpack on their back is heavy because of material possessions. But in reality, the heaviest part is not what we carry with our hands, but what we hold in our hearts. Life is a transient realm. Each passing day is like a breeze that sweeps across the eaves. But in the human heart, there are things that hold us back for years. Some hold on to a feeling of being hurt by an unintentional remark. Some cling to a failure, seeing it as proof of their own helplessness. Some let the past shackle the present, making future steps heavy, as if treading on muddy ground after a heavy rain. We often ask why we live so tired, why we are not happy, why our hearts feel weighed down as if by stones. But rarely do we realize that we ourselves are carrying invisible burdens that no one else can see. In the Buddha's teachings, life is impermanent, and the mind is the master. The mind creates all afflictions. An unpurified mind is like a garden overgrown with weeds. No matter how much water you add, fertilizer you apply, or beautiful flowers you sow, weeds will still grow, crowding out and overshadowing all the good things. People often try to clean up their external homes, but forget to clean the home within their minds. They are willing to spend an entire afternoon organizing a wardrobe, but refuse to spend a minute looking within to see what burdens their soul holds. These invisible burdens, though intangible, can weigh more heavily than any stone in the world. Sadness has no form, but it can cause someone to lose sleep for months. Fear has no color, but it can make the heart tighten every time one prepares to embark on something new. A word has no weight, but it can oppress a soul for 10 long years. Invisible things often possess the greatest power. That is why the Buddha taught that the root of suffering does not lie in the event itself, but in how our mind embraces that event. In Buddhist teachings, what causes people pain is not life hurting them, but their own clinging to that wound. Clinging is the cause of countless afflictions. When we hold on to something for too long, it becomes a stone tightly binding the heart. Some always remember their first failure. Some repeatedly replay in their minds a painful remark. Some blame themselves for years, even though the event passed long ago. The more the mind clings, the heavier the suffering. It's like a container of muddy water. If you keep stirring it, the water will never clear. The human mind is the same. If you let the past be continually stirred up, no matter how beautiful the present, it's hard to fully appreciate it. In fact, the human mind is like a garden. If we let weeds grow wild, the garden becomes tangled and desolate. For flowers to bloom, weeds must be pulled. For the mind to be at peace, negative things must be cleared from the heart. But the paradox is that most people fear facing themselves. We like to look outward, observe others, judge others, but rarely look inward to see the things that weigh down our souls. That is why many people live their entire lives without understanding why they are tired, why they find life so heavy. The real burden is not on their shoulders, but right in their heart. The Buddhist teachings with impact. Channel. Once knew a girl who carried a hurtful remark with her for 10 years, simply because of a teacher's words. That year, she was young, just entering the dreamy age of a student. In one class, because she failed a test, her teacher told her directly, "You won't amount to anything." The remark, seemingly ordinary at first, struck her at her most sensitive moment. It was like a small thorn piercing her tender heart, and lodging there. For a decade, she grew up with a fear of failure, always lurking behind her. Whenever she faced something new, she would tell herself she wasn't good enough. When starting a project, she always thought of the day it might collapse. When someone praised her, she didn't believe it. When someone trusted her with a task, she doubted herself. All of it stemmed from a remark her teacher likely didn't think much about when uttering. Some words are fleeting for the speaker, but can become long-term pain for the listener. That girl spent 10 years living in a shapeless shadow. A shadow called self-doubt. It was only when she accidentally heard a Dharma talk that said words can be a prison, but also a door to liberation, that she suddenly awakened. She realized that her teacher's words were not meant to define her life. It was the way she embraced those words for 10 years that made them so heavy. Letting go is not erasing memories, but looking at them in a different way. She understood that she had the right to choose how she perceived herself. When she accepted that those words were just a fragment of the past, not the truth of her life, her heart lightened, as if a heavy stone had been lifted from her shoulders. From then on, she dared to do, dared to try, dared to believe. The door she thought had been locked, for 10 years it turned out, was just waiting for her to open it from within. There was also a man who carried a lifelong failure from his early career for many years. He once went bankrupt when he first started his business. That downfall was so great that he always saw it as the end of his capabilities. He didn't dare to start over, didn't dare to change, didn't dare to believe that he could succeed again. What's remarkable is that others had long forgotten his failure, but in his mind, it still existed as if it had happened just yesterday. He let the past control him, let it shackle his feet, making every step trembling and heavy. Then one day, he heard a teaching that said people don't suffer from stumbling over a stone, but from constantly picking it up. He suddenly understood that failure is not a life sentence. Failure is a part of the journey, like a rain shower that helps the soil become loose so that better seedlings can grow. He asked himself why he kept clinging to something that had passed. He realized he didn't lack opportunities. He had simply locked every door, thinking he wasn't worthy of walking through them. In that moment, he let go of his self-blame that he had held for so many years. He began to act again. But this time, his heart was no longer clouded by fear. When he let go internally, his external world also changed. He succeeded not because circumstances were more favorable, but because his mind was lighter. In Buddhist scriptures, it is taught that the mind is like water. If the water is stirred and cloudy, no reflection can be seen. If you want to see the truth, the water must settle. Our mind is the same. When it carries too many fears and hurts, even if we live amidst a myriad of beautiful things, we cannot fully appreciate them. The Buddha once said that the source of affliction comes from clinging. When we cling to something that has passed, whether it's a mistake, a word, or a sad experience, our mind remains stuck in the old place. A person carrying a heavy backpack who wants to feel lighter must open the backpack and remove unnecessary things. A person carrying a heavy burden in their mind who wants peace must look back and see what they are holding on to. No one can do that for us. Even the Buddha only gives us the lamp. The steps on the path must still be taken by ourselves. The lesson in this section is that letting go externally is only the first step. Letting go internally is the real transformation. We may easily discard an old item, an unsuitable relationship, a job that no longer brings joy, but it is very difficult to let go of the fear, the hurt, or the disappointment that we store in our hearts. People often think that letting go means forgetting, but letting go is understanding. Letting go is looking back at the past with different eyes. Letting go is not running away, but also not letting wounds control the present. The mind is not a box to throw nameless things into. The mind is a garden that needs to be cleaned and cared for every day. Weeds don't disappear on their own. A hand must pull them out. Afflictions are the same. If you are listening and something in your heart feels heavy, understand that you are not alone. Everyone has invisible burdens that are incredibly heavy. You don't need to force yourself to forget. Just gently accept that it's time to release what is no longer necessary. You can start with very small things, like breathing slowly to observe yourself. Each breath is an opportunity to return to the present without being controlled by the past. You can write down the things that hurt you to see them more clearly. When you write them down, you are taking the sadness from your heart and putting it on paper. The truth revealed will help you understand that many things are not as heavy as you once thought. You can also sit still for a few minutes to observe your emotions without running away from them. Sitting still is like letting the water in a jar settle. When the water settles, you will see your heart become clearer. Some burdens don't need anyone to explain them. You just need to give yourself some space to breathe, and that's enough for them to lighten. You deserve peace. You deserve a light and spacious heart to welcome good things. Life is a transient realm. The human mind is even more temporary. Don't let your mind become a warehouse for pain. Let it become a place where light can enter. Letting go internally is the greatest gift you can give yourself. When you do that, you will see that life has been light all along. It's just that we've carried too many things that don't belong to us. There are moments in life, amidst the hustle and bustle of having to be strong, having to stay calm, having to stand firm in the face of so many worries, that we suddenly realize we have been straining for too long. Some strain with cold eyes, some strain with a smile, pretending everything is fine. Some strain through long nights, leaning on themselves, not daring to be weak. Then one day, when we sit quietly, we suddenly understand that this life is inherently a transient realm. Everything comes and goes, like the wind. Nothing forces us to remain as rigid as a rock in a stream. The impermanence of the world tells us that everything is in motion. Every state changes. So we also have the right to relax and live more lightly. When we understand impermanence, we understand that there is no reason to push ourselves too hard. The tighter we hold, the more we hurt. The harder we try to keep, the more tired we become. Life is like a hand holding a handful of sand. If we clench tightly, it will slip through our fingers. If we relax, the grains of sand will remain still and not hurt us. Impermanence is not a reminder to scare us, but a compassionate whisper that we don't need to strain anymore. No one asks us to always be strong. No one forces us to keep all our hurts inside. This life is just a stopping place, so living lightly is a gift we give ourselves. In Buddhist teachings, the concept of relaxing is not giving up. The Buddha does not teach us to escape life. The Buddha teaches us to look at life with wider, clearer eyes, so as not to think that everything needs to be resisted. When our mind is clenched, even small things become big. When our mind opens up, heavy things become light, like a leaf falling onto the surface of a lake. Relaxing is letting go of stubbornness, letting go of the desire to control everything according to our will. Relaxing is accepting that somewhere in life there are things we cannot change. There are people we cannot keep. There are feelings that, even if we cling to them, will no longer be complete. There are choices that, no matter how hard we try, cannot be reversed. The Buddhist definition of relaxing always points towards self-awareness. It's when we clearly see that the root of suffering is clinging, and then gently put it down. If we observe our minds carefully, we will see that people often live in a state of tension. We are tense because we fear saying the wrong thing. We are tense because we fear others misunderstanding us. We are tense because we want someone to stay with us. We are tense because we try to make everything seem fine, even when our heart is breaking. The human psyche always tends to strain to be perceived as strong, as not easily hurt. Meanwhile, the natural essence of the mind longs to be released, to be at peace, to live in accordance with true emotions. We strain because the mind fears loss, but the more we fear loss, the more we lose ourselves. We strain because we want to be understood, but the more we try to explain, the more we suffer. Life does not demand that we say everything we think, nor does it demand that we hold on to those who wish to leave. There are people we can understand simply by remaining silent. There are people who, even if we say 1,000 words, will not hear what our heart desires. So, relaxing is also a form of wisdom. We let everything return to its natural state. We stop hoping for things beyond our control. We let things that no longer belong to us be carried away by the wind. We keep our hearts serene, like a calm lake after a rain. There is a gentle story that makes anyone who hears it reflect deeply. A story about a woman after her divorce. From the day she stepped out of her old marriage, she chose to strain herself to prove to the world that she was fine, that she was strong, that she could do everything. Every morning, she woke up early to take her children to school, then rushed into work. In the evening, she took care of meals, taught her children, and fixed everything in the house with her tired hands. She always told everyone around her that she was fine, that she was used to it, that she was strong enough to get through anything. But in truth, she had never known a day of peace. Until one afternoon, as the last rays of sunlight fell on the window, she sat down in a chair and simply let go of her shoulders, which had been strained for too long. Those shoulders had long been as stiff as a rock from carrying too many fears. She sat there and let the tears slowly fall, not out of weakness, but because for the first time in many years, she allowed herself to breathe. She realized she was just an ordinary human being who knew tiredness, pain, and sorrow. In the moment she relaxed her shoulders, relaxed her mind, she felt her heart become as light as a leaf. Strangely, the very moment she stopped trying to appear strong was when she was strongest, because she was honest with herself. She accepted that sometimes weakness is also a part of peace. And from that day on, she no longer lived to please the whole world. She began to allow herself to rest, to let go of what no longer fit, to smile at herself before smiling at anyone else. In the scriptures, the Buddha taught that a mind that strains too much will give rise to afflictions, because it is always in a state of wanting to control. When we relax, the mind returns to its natural state, like flowing water. Soft water never breaks. It shapes itself to the earth, but never loses itself. In the Anapanasati Sutta, discourse on mindfulness of breathing, the Buddha taught about breath as the door that brings people back to stillness. When we relax our shoulders and chest, our breath becomes deeper. When we release wandering thoughts, our mind becomes broader. Breath is also like the rhythm of life's steps. Focus on one inhale and one exhale, and you will feel as light as if the entire sky has been lifted from your shoulders. Relaxing offers us the lesson not to try to hold on to things that don't belong to the heart. Those who wish to stay will understand each other, even in silence. Those who wish to leave, no matter how tightly we hold them, will find a way to go. It's not because we are not good enough, but because the karmic connection has ended. When we understand that everyone has their own path, we suddenly feel that our mind no longer needs to cling. We let everyone follow their own karmic connections. We follow ours. We no longer blame, no longer ask why, no longer compare our lives to others' lives. We know that some things need to be let go of in order to grasp something better. The healing message from the state of relaxation is not about ceasing to live, but about living more deeply. When we relax, we listen to ourselves more. We let our heart speak instead of our ego. We look at things with gentle eyes instead of defensive ones. If one day you feel your heart is too heavy, you can try a very gentle meditation. Sit still, close your eyes, and simply place your attention on your shoulders. Feel how they are tense, then gently let them down. let your breath go deep into the lowest part of your abdomen. Then exhale very softly. In each breath, let your body and mind float together into a state of serenity. You don't need to chase after any thought. Just know that in this moment, you are safe. When we know how to relax, each step suddenly becomes lighter. We know when to stop when we are tired, how to hug ourselves when we are lonely, how to say no to what depletes us. We know that life doesn't need to be about winning or losing to be complete. We just need our heart to be at peace. Relaxing is also a way of loving yourself. Loving in a way that doesn't force yourself to be strong all the time. Loving in a way that doesn't strain relationships that have fractured. Loving in a way that allows the heart to breathe after enduring too much pressure. When living with acceptance, we relax from unnecessary expectations. When we understand life is a transient realm, we relax from clinging to fragile things. When we let our mind be at peace, we relax from external noise. And then we find life becomes strangely easy to breathe. Easy to breathe because we no longer have to try to be a perfect version. Easy to breathe because we don't care what anyone thinks. Easy to breathe because we know that everything will change. The only thing we can do is live fully with every breath we have, every moment we are present, every sincere affection we give. I want to offer a very simple reminder. Relax, not to give up, but to truly live. A heart soft enough can embrace the whole world. A mind broad enough can contain peace. And a person who knows how to allow themselves to relax can walk through this life with steps as light as the wind. There are times in life when we walk through each day like a warrior wearing heavy armor. Our face may remain calm, but deep within, countless silent battles rage. We fight with fear, with expectations, with failure, with things that don't go as desired. We want to control every change in life, to force the water to flow in a specific direction, to turn destiny with our own strength. Then, at some point, amidst that long, unending rush, we suddenly realize what the ancients have long said, that life is a transient realm, that all phenomena are impermanent, that true strength does not lie in resistance, but sometimes in the ability to gently let go. Letting go gently is not giving up, nor is it letting life spin in any direction it chooses. Letting go gently is a state of wisdom. When the mind is no longer caught in resistance, we can see the truth of all problems. When the water stops churning, it clearly reflects the sky. And when people no longer resist fate with anger or blame, we can truly see what is contained within our hearts. Impermanence teaches us that all clinging is the cause of suffering. Therefore, letting go gently is not the act of the weak, but the step of those who deeply understand the nature of life. In Buddhist teachings, when speaking of the root of suffering, the Buddha clearly pointed out that it is attachment that binds the mind. People suffer not because of bad circumstances, but because they want everything to go exactly as they wish. The more we try to resist the movement of cause and effect, The more we try to cling to things that are destined to fade, the more frustrated we feel. This suffering is like a person holding a sinking rock in the water. The more they fear, the tighter they grip, the faster they sink. Only when they gently let go can they float. Letting go gently is not a choice of weakness, but a door that brings the mind back to clarity. That's when we understand that resistance only exhausts us, while letting go gently helps us see clearly what to keep and what to let life arrange on its own. The human mind naturally tends to resist. When we encounter failure, we want to rise up with impatience. When someone treats us boldly, we want to react with stubbornness or sharp words. When life doesn't go as desired, we want to struggle to prove that we deserve better. We resist because we think that with just a little more strength, everything will change. But in reality, it's not always like that. Some things become heavier the more you strain. Some things become more wrong the more you try. Just like water squeezed will spray more forcefully. But when we release our hand, it finds the most gentle and correct path. The human mind is also like water. When it's soft, it's flexible. When it's rigid, it breaks easily. Many people mistakenly think that letting go gently is accepting defeat. But in fact, those who know how to let go gently are often those who understand life much better, because they no longer chase the illusion that they can control the flow of karmic conditions. They only focus on what is their responsibility, leaving the rest for the wind and time to handle. In each gentle breath, they choose serenity as their strength, instead of letting their mind chase after impatience or fear. At that point, they're much stronger than those who are straining against reality. There's a story that many elders often tell the younger generation as a lesson about the power of serenity. It's about a young man, still very young, but carrying many wounds from continuous failures. He once had a big plan, but it didn't work out. He once fell in love, but couldn't keep the person he loved. Each time he stumbled, he would pick himself up with tension, with a willpower full of pressure, with words of self-blame. He told himself that if he just strained a little more, tried a little harder, resisted fate a little more, everything would change. But the more he tried, the more tired he became. The more he struggled, the further he alienated himself. His mind tangled like a ball of yarn. The more he tried to untangle it, the more tangled it became. One day, after an incident that completely exhausted him, he sat down on an old wooden chair on the porch of his house. The evening fell very slowly. The wind blew very gently, but in his heart was an empty space full of unease. He no longer had the strength to resist. He no longer wanted to cling to anything. In that moment, he just sat still, looking into the empty space before him, and quietly asking himself, what am I really chasing? What am I really afraid of? What has all this resistance brought me other than exhaustion? And then, the moment he stopped resisting, he saw himself clearly. He saw that all his past failures were not due to fate playing tricks, but because he had tried to force himself to be someone else. He had tried to walk a path that wasn't suited to his heart. He had lived with the fear of being left behind. When he gently let go of that fear, he realized that serenity was his greatest strength, like soft yet persistent water. It can penetrate rock over a very long time without making a sound. Water never raises its voice. Water never tries to appear strong, but water always wins. The strength of water comes from its softness and persistence. A person who knows how to let go gently is similar. When they choose not to resist, they begin to quietly transform circumstances. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha taught that those who control their minds will overcome all suffering, just as a skillful charioteer guides their chariot through treacherous terrain. Controlling the mind is not done by suppressing emotions, but by awareness. When we look directly at emotions, without judgment, we are practicing gently letting go. When we clearly see anger rising, and then realize it is not us, we are letting go of the control of greed, anger, and ignorance. When we clearly see worry coming and going like a cloud in the sky, we are living in accordance with the teaching of impermanence. This is letting go gently in the spirit of Buddhism, not abandoning life, but opening a space for life to flow through us naturally, without sweeping us away. From these teachings, we draw the lesson that resistance is the root of affliction, while letting go gently is the source of wisdom. When we stop pursuing what is not right for us, we will see that life still offers many beautiful choices. When we no longer try to prove our worth to someone, we can feel our true value from within. When we stop trying to control others, we learn how to control our own minds. And when we stop struggling against adversity, we see its true nature. Adversity can be a challenge, but it can also be a gift, depending on how we perceive it. The strength of gentle letting go does not have a glamorous appearance. It is neither noisy nor fierce. It is like a deep breath on a quiet morning, like clear water reflecting the sky, like the moment we place our hand on our chest and tell ourselves that we have tried our best. Now is the time to be gentler. When we release ourselves from haste, we hear our inner voice more clearly. When we no longer chase conflicting thoughts, we begin to understand what we need. And when we slow down, we see that every small thing around us can also become a source of comfort. A warm cup of tea can soothe a heavy evening. A soft ray of sunlight can comfort a heart that has just experienced pain. A hug we give ourselves can also be a support. Letting go gently is not to lose, but to understand ourselves. Water is soft, but can penetrate rock because it is not hasty and not arrogant. It advances little by little, but persistently. When people learn to let go gently, they will progress with clarity and awareness. When the mind does not resist, wisdom opens. When wisdom opens, we know that everything has its causes and conditions. What comes to us is to teach us some lesson. What leaves us is to allow us to move on to another journey. And when we truly understand this, we no longer blame adversity. We thank it. The healing message of this section wants to say that anyone can learn the strength of letting go gently if they are willing to listen to themselves. You can practice with the simplest things. Every morning, sit for a moment, place your hands on your belly, and follow your breath. As you inhale, feel your whole body being filled with life. As you exhale, let worries leave your body like dust carried away by the wind. Whenever your mind starts to resist something, ask yourself if you are resisting out of fear or out of understanding. If out of fear, gently release. If out of understanding, act with calmness. Letting go gently also helps us live with acceptance more deeply. When karmic connections form, we welcome them. When they dissolve, we release them. When people come, we cherish them. When people go, we wish them well. The mind is like water, soft yet firm. The softer we are, the less we are broken. The lighter we are, the more flexible we are in all circumstances. And when we can live like that, the mind will be as peaceful as a morning lake. Life is a transient realm. We don't need to carry too many burdens. The strength of a human life sometimes lies only in the ability to smile at things that don't go as desired and tell ourselves that we understand. Human life is inherently like a passing breeze in the sky. When we look at life through the lens of impermanence, we suddenly understand that nothing lasts forever. Happiness or suffering, triumph or failure, love or separation, all are just waves passing through the immense ocean of human existence. That is why those who came before us often reiterate that this life is merely a transient realm. Each day we live is an opportunity to learn to be mindful, to live lightly, to know when to stop before anger takes over, and to know how to open our hearts to the suffering of others. In fact, when we understand the principle of impermanence, the mind naturally softens like a bowing ear of rice. We no longer want to contend for superiority. We no longer want to harbor afflictions in our hearts. We clearly see that life is too short for sorrow and anger, yet too long to live in ignorance. Some people ask, what is spiritual practice? Is it entering a monastery, wearing brown robes, living within 4 pure walls? But the older we get, the more we experience life's myriad changes, the more we understand that spiritual practice is not just within a monastery. It is not an exalted ritual, nor is it anything complicated. Spiritual practice is actually found in every ordinary breath of life. It lies in the way we speak a kind word, perform a wholesome deed, think a benevolent thought. It lies in knowing when to stop when anger rises, knowing not to utter words that hurt others, knowing how to look at someone with compassionate eyes instead of judging. Spiritual practice is right within the life we are living. Each day that passes is an opportunity for practice, whether we are at the market, at home, at work, or standing amidst the bustling crowds on the street. In the Buddha's teachings, everything starts from the mind. If the mind is kind, life is peaceful. If the mind is turbulent, life is suffering. Therefore, no matter where we go, no matter how many people we meet, we cannot avoid conflict if our mind is full of anger and stubbornness. The greatest suffering of human beings lies in always wanting everything to go their way. We want others to be as good as we expect. We want events to happen the way we want them to. We want life to conform to our desires. However, life is inherently impermanent. It never operates according to anyone's wishes. Branches bloom and then wither. People come and then go. Time flows and then disappears. If we constantly want to cling, constantly want to hold on, the mind naturally becomes heavy like stone. So the wise learn to let go gently, and those who understand the Dharma learn to practice right in the midst of busyness, right in the smallest things. Many people lament that they don't know how to practice. They think spiritual practice is something that requires extensive study, a deep understanding of scriptures. But in reality, practice begins with the simplest things. A kind word is practice. A wholesome action is practice. A benevolent thought is practice. A moment of pausing before speaking harsh words is practice. A second of mindfulness to realize that the anger in one's heart is not worth destroying. Family harmony is also practice. A person who knows how to practice in everyday life is like someone who knows how to keep the water in a cup clear. When the water settles, the bottom of the cup naturally becomes clear, and everything becomes distinct. In the course of life, each person carries invisible burdens. Some worry about earning a living, working from morning till night, chasing after food, clothing, rice, and money. Some worry about their family, children, and elderly parents. Some carry a past hurt that has never healed. But no matter what the burden, we can learn to gently lay it down with mindfulness. When we have right mindfulness, we will not be drawn into the whirlpool of trivial matters. When we are awake, we know what to keep and what to let go of. A person living with right mindfulness is like someone walking on a long bridge. Even if the wind is strong, even if there's a deep abyss below, they maintain their serenity. There is a simple yet profoundly insightful everyday story. The story is about an elderly mother in a poor rural area. She was illiterate, spent her entire life toiling in the fields with firewood through successive seasons of rain and sun. Her eyes were dim, her hands trembled with age. Yet every morning she would sit on the porch, counting each bead of her rosary, reciting the Buddha's name, each phrase clear. She didn't pray for anything grand. She didn't wish for wealth. She didn't ask for anything for herself. She only prayed for her heart to be at peace, and for her children and grandchildren to be well. People asked her, "What do you recite the Buddha's name for? You don't know the scriptures well, and you don't deeply understand the teachings." She just smiled and said, "Reciting the Buddha's name helps my heart feel lighter after so many years of hardship, helps me not be sad about things not worth being bought about, and helps me not be angry about things not worth being angry about." She said that human life is like flowing water, and reciting a phrase of the Buddha's name is like clarifying the muddiness in her heart, so the water of her mind becomes clearer. That story makes us realize that spiritual practice is not about how many scriptures we know. It is not wisdom learned through words. Practice begins with a wholesome intention. In every moment, an illiterate elderly mother can practice, not with profound words, but with a sincere and kind heart. When she sits quietly, her hands counting beads, her heart becomes more awake. When her heart is awake, she is more loving. When she is more loving, her family naturally becomes warmer. A person living with a kind heart can make an entire house bright, as if a candle were placed in the center of the room. The Buddha taught that the mind is the root of all good and evil. The mind is like a plot of land. Whatever seeds are sown, those fruits will bloom. If we sow seeds of anger, we will reap suffering. If we sow seeds of greed, we will encounter unease. If we sow wholesome seeds, we will surely receive peace. In the Dhammapada, it is taught that the mind precedes all mental states. Mind is their chief. Mind is their maker. When our mind is kind, we speak kind words. When our mind is clear, we see life clearly. When our mind is expansive, we love expansively. Conversely, if our mind is dark, everything we see also becomes dark. Life will become heavy, simply because our mind doesn't know how to let go. Delving deeper, we see that human beings suffer primarily because they cannot control their own thoughts. When someone says something we disagree with, we immediately react. When we encounter something displeasing, we immediately get annoyed. When we receive criticism, we immediately become offended. Thoughts follow thoughts like dark clouds extending across the sky, and it is these thoughts that make us lose our peace. But if, at that moment, we knew how to pause for a breath, to look into our mind, we would see that anger is just a small wave. If we don't feed this small wave, it will naturally subside. But if we allow anger to continue to be nourished by negative thoughts, it will become a storm. Some say that practicing in everyday life is too difficult because there are too many things that disturb us. But precisely because life is full of disturbances, practicing within life is all the more precious. Practice is not running away. Practice is confronting. Practice is standing in the midst of a storm and still maintaining a small space of peace in your heart. That space of peace comes from the habit of mindfulness. When we eat, we know we are eating. When we breathe, we know we are breathing. When we speak, we know whether our words are hurting anyone. Mindfulness is like sunlight. When the sun rises, darkness naturally dissipates. When mindfulness is present, afflictions naturally diminish greatly. Let's look at our own families to see this clearly. A person who practices will create a gentle energy that radiates throughout the house. When they speak softly, others also soften. When they are not angry, no one has a reason to become angry. When they know how to yield, others are also more easily softened. Wholesome energy is very strange. It is invisible but clearly felt, like the fragrance of a flower. Even if you don't see it, it still makes you feel comfortable. A mindful person is such a flower. They soothe the entire atmosphere around them. They make those in the house less troubled. They contribute to creating a peaceful home. So, how do we practice in everyday life? It's actually very simple. We just need to start by keeping our words gentle. Every time you want to say something harsh, pause for a beat. Remember that a word can heal, but can also hurt deeply. Kind words are like a cool breeze. They soothe the hearts of others and simultaneously soothe our own hearts. We can also practice through wholesome actions. A small act like helping someone pick up a dropped item, assisting an elderly person down a step, sharing a meal with someone in need. All these are practice. When we do something good, our mind becomes clearer. Practicing through wholesome thoughts is equally important. Whenever a negative thought arises, instead of nurturing it, we just need to remind ourselves that everything is impermanent. This sorrow, too, will pass. This annoyance, too, will end. The person who troubles us will also disappear from our story. Nothing stays forever. If we know how to see with the eyes of impermanence, we no longer want to carry many heavy thoughts. We understand that everyone in life is carrying something. When we understand, we easily empathize. When we empathize, we easily let go. Sometimes spiritual practice is simply knowing when to stop before anger flares up, stopping to observe our mind, stopping so as not to do something we will later regret, stopping to maintain harmony in the family, stopping to remember that we are living in a transient realm, stopping to know that a word spoken cannot be taken back. Just 1 second of mindfulness can help us avoid so many afflictions. Mindfulness in everyday life is not something distant. It is present in every breath that we inadvertently forget. When we walk more lightly, speak more slowly, think more deeply, we are practicing. When we learn to look at life with compassionate eyes, we are practicing. When we open our hearts and forgive others, we are practicing. When we are not stubborn, not competitive, not comparing, we are practicing. Spiritual practice is illuminating our mind amidst a life full of darkness. And the most beautiful thing is that when a person knows how to live mindfully, they radiate that energy to those around them. If a family has such a person, the home will be warmer. Children will observe and learn. Spouses will understand each other better. Parents will feel at ease. Wherever there is someone who knows how to practice in everyday life, there is peace. Because peace does not come from material possessions. It comes from a mind that knows how to be gentle amidst all changes. The lesson from the story of the illiterate elderly mother who sincerely recites the Buddha's name every morning reminds us that practice is not in the form. Practice is in the wholesome intention. Practice is in the heart that wishes to live kindly, well, and decently. An educated person may not necessarily have a peaceful mind. A person who knows many scriptures may not necessarily know how to live kindly. But a person who sincerely wishes to keep their mind as clear as flowing water will surely spread peace throughout their family. Today, if our heart is weary, let's slow down to see that amidst this chaotic life, we can still live lightly. We can still live mindfully. We can still practice in every breath. And when we know how to live with acceptance, know how to accept, know how to let go, know how to keep our mind gentle, then everything will naturally settle. The home will naturally be warmer. The heart will naturally be more at peace. Because a person living with right mindfulness always radiates gentle energy to their family. And that energy will nourish us, nourish those we love, so that each passing day becomes a peaceful day in this transient life. There are afternoons when we sit quietly, watching the slanted sunlight fall on the porch, and we deeply realize that human life is truly just a temporary stop amidst endless cycles. We come here carrying countless karmic connections, and when we leave, we only carry what we have sown in our hearts. Therefore, when we understand impermanence, we suddenly realize that the most precious thing in life is not a grand house, not what others think of us, but the blessings we create through our daily way of life. A kind word, a grateful meal, a timely act of yielding. These things, seemingly as small as fragile drops of water, are powerful enough to refresh an entire lifetime. The ancients often said, "Blessings are created by oneself. Misfortunes are caused by oneself." This philosophy is not meant to threaten or deter, but to remind us that all transformation begins from within. The Buddha taught that humans possess the ability to change their karma, not through magic or prayers, but through a process of living wholesome lives with every breath. When we change our attitude towards life, change our way of seeing the world, change the energy emanating from our minds, then good things will gradually blossom. A blessed person is not blessed because of luck, but because they live rightly. They know when to sow seeds, how to tend the soil, how to maintain a kind heart in every word and action. We often think of karma as something heavy, an invisible sentence waiting to fall upon our lives. But in Buddhist teachings, karma is not something to be feared. Karma is the seeds that have been sown. Good seeds yield wholesome fruits. Bad seeds bring unease. And the miracle is that the moment we become aware of what we are sowing, we begin to have the ability to transform karma. An impatient person can become gentle. A selfish person can learn to give. A complaining person can learn to be grateful for life. Just one shift in thought can change the entire flow of karma. Just one wholesome thought can redirect a person's entire life. However, people often forget this. We tend to look at circumstances to complain, forgetting that our attitude towards life is what truly determines things. Some people live in abundance, but always feel lacking. Some are poor, but live peacefully and gratefully every day. Some people, because of a few thoughtless words, hurt their loved ones. Then, when everything collapses, they complain, "Why is my karma so heavy?" But karma does not arise spontaneously. Karma comes from the moments of anger we don't control, from the harsh words we speak, from the times we place our ego above love. Just like a river, if it is muddied from within, no matter how peaceful the outside, it cannot become clear. The human mind is the same. If we want a peaceful life, our mind must be peaceful. If we want family harmony, each person must reflect on themselves. If we want blessings to come, we must sow wholesome deeds. That is why, in Buddhist teachings, practice is not just meditation or chanting. Practice is a gradual transformation in daily life. Practice is learning to speak gently. Practice is knowing when to stop when anger arises. Practice is knowing when to bow our heads when we need to yield. Practice is maintaining a soft heart, even when life sometimes brings storms. And blessings are the sweet fruits that blossom from such small deeds. I once met a man who carried a lot of anger within him. He worked hard, under pressure, and came home to yell at his wife and children. In his eyes, it was just exhaustion. But in his family's eyes, those were wounds festering day by day. They silently endured. He, meanwhile, thought he wasn't doing anything wrong. Until one evening, at dinner, when he saw his elderly mother's trembling hand pick up a piece of fish and place it in his bowl, he suddenly froze. His mother looked at him gently, her eyes without reproach, without sorrow, only boundless love. In that moment, he felt something in his heart soften. He realized that for all those years, he had only received his family's sacrifices, but had never reciprocated with a kind word. He realized this home never needed his money that much. They only needed him to be kinder, just a little softer in his words, just a little less harsh, so the family atmosphere could be peaceful. From that day on, he began to change. Not forced change, but natural, like the wind subtly changing direction. He practiced speaking gently, even if the words were still awkward. He practiced yielding, even if his ego sometimes wanted to argue. He practiced thanking his wife and children, even though he previously thought it wasn't important. And the strange thing was that when he changed, the whole family changed too. Laughter appeared more often. The atmosphere in the house became warmer. His elderly mother was less ill because her heart had fewer worries. His wife looked at him with gentle eyes. His children ran to hug him like a friend. Happiness came not because he had more money, but because he had learned to live kindly. Blessings came from the transformation within his own mind. That story teaches us that blessings don't come from afar. Blessings are not something that falls from the sky. Blessings blossom from the wholesome intentions we sow. When we learn to speak more pleasantly, blessings come. When we learn to yield a little to maintain harmony, blessings come. When we learn to smile instead of frown, blessings come. When we learn to be grateful instead of resentful, blessings come. And when we learn to love ourselves, to love those close to us, blessings also come. The Buddha taught that cause and effect always operate, not deviating by a hair's breadth. Whatever seed you sow, that fruit you reap. But cause and effect are not meant to frighten us, but to awaken us. If we have unintentionally sown unwholesome deeds, we can start sowing again now. A person who was once quick-tempered can still learn to be gentle. A person who was once selfish can still become compassionate. A person who once hurt others can still begin to heal with sincerity. The Buddha never said that people cannot change. On the contrary, he clearly pointed out that all transformation begins with a mind that knows how to reflect on itself. The teachings of the ancestors say that to transform karma, one must transform the mind. To transform the mind, one must clearly see what one is nourishing. A wholesome mind leads to wholesome karma. An unpeaceful mind leads to unpeaceful karma. A resentful mind leads to afflictions. A grateful mind leads to happiness. Therefore, the greatest strength of human beings lies not in muscles or intellect, but in the ability to regulate one's own mind. Once the mind is at peace, even storms become gentle. When the mind is kind, the person facing you will also soften. When the mind is clear, the path ahead naturally opens. If in this life we find ourselves not having favorable conditions, not being peaceful, not having many blessings, then instead of asking why life is unfair, let's ask our hearts what we are sowing. Perhaps we are so busy that we forget to say thank you. Perhaps we are so proud that we forget to apologize to our loved ones. Perhaps we chase after external things so much that we forget to take care of our own minds. And when we look back, we will realize that blessings are actually very easy to create. They don't require money or power. They only require a kind heart. Life is a transient realm. We pass by each other like casual visitors. Some stay longer. Some just pass through and leave. But every encounter has a karmic connection. If we know how to live kindly with each other, know how to keep our hearts light, know how to cherish every meal, every word, every moment with loved ones, then this life will become much gentler. We cannot change the flow of life, but we can change the way we walk. And that very change will transform our karmic connections. When we understand that blessings come from very small things, we will no longer chase after grand illusions. We will find happiness right in simple meals, in a mother's smile, in the quiet of early morning, in an afternoon spent sitting still with a steady heart. Spiritual practice is not in profound words, but in simple daily choices. Practice is sowing wholesome seeds. Practice is keeping the mind kind, and wholesome fruits will naturally come when the conditions are ripe. If you are hearing these words, try to look back at your life for a moment. Is there anything you want to transform? Is there anything in your mind that needs to be renewed? Is there any wound you want to let go of? Is there any sadness you want to lighten? Start with the smallest thing: a sincere thank you, an act of yielding, a benevolent thought, a deep breath to keep your mind calm. When change begins in the mind, the rhythm of life also changes. Blessings blossom, and life gradually becomes easier to breathe. Transformation doesn't need to be noisy. It is as gentle as a drop of water falling into a stream. It is as silent as the dawn, quietly rising after a long night. But it is precisely these transformations that create a peaceful life. When you understand that, you will realize that all happiness originates from within. And when the inside is illuminated, life naturally illuminates as well. There are times when we sit quietly and suddenly realize something that seems very simple, yet is profoundly deep. Human life is like water, silently flowing through our fingers. We try to hold on to every bit so it doesn't get lost. But precisely when we try to grasp it most tightly, the water flows faster. This feeling makes us understand a truth. Everything in this world changes according to the law of impermanence. No one can hold on to youth forever. No one can hold on to a loved one forever. No one can hold on to today for one more moment. Time is invisible and silent, yet it is more powerful than anything else, for it can take everything away without a word of farewell. One morning, we are busy with countless tasks, yet by evening, we have lost the opportunity to say a simple phrase to someone that we love them. Sometimes, we dwell on yesterday or worry about tomorrow, forgetting that the present is the only thing that truly lives with us. The Buddha taught that a human body is hard to obtain. Life is fragile. Impermanence comes unexpectedly, like an exhale that may not be followed by an inhale. Therefore, every present moment is the most precious part of human existence. When speaking of impermanence, many people think of loss or ruin. But if we look deeply, impermanence is a gift that helps us realize life in every moment. Because we know everything changes, we appreciate more. Because we know we can lose things, we truly love each other. Because we know no one lives forever, we know that the person in front of us is the most important thing. Life does not wait for us to love. Time does not wait for us to realize the value of the person accompanying us. Everyone we meet on this journey has a very unique meaning. Some come to teach us kindness. Some come to remind us to let go. Some come to reflect our own minds. And some come only to leave, but still leave a warm space of memory within us. The present is the only bridge connecting us to the things that are alive. When we miss the present, we also miss the opportunity to love, to understand, to listen, to truly live. According to Buddhist teachings, suffering largely comes from our minds, either dwelling in the past or projecting into the future. The past has flowed away like water under a bridge. No matter how much we regret, remember, or hurt, we cannot make it return. The future is like an untouched cloud. But we are already quick to fear all sorts of things. Because of this, people lose the peace they inherently possess. Whether the mind is at peace or in turmoil does not depend on circumstances, but on where we place our attention. If we pay attention to what has passed, we will only feel regret. If we pay too much attention to what has not yet come, we will only feel unease. But if we place our mind in the present, everything becomes clear, light, and fully present. The Buddha's wisdom teaches that when the mind is present in the moment, suffering dissipates like morning mist meeting the sun. The present is the only place where we can breathe, the only place where we can love. The present is the only place where we can transform karma from its root. All awakening begins from this moment. In human psychology, there is a deep-seated habit of always striving for what is absent. We think we will be happy when we achieve something in the future. Then, we think we will be at peace if we have a little more. In this way, the mind is constantly pulled away, forgetting to look down at where our feet are standing. When eating, we think about what needs to be done. When working, we remember what is past. When next to a loved one, we fear losing them. When they are gone, we regret the days we didn't cherish. Our mind is like a lamp in the wind, always flickering and never still. It is this restlessness that exhausts us. Modern people are tired, not because they do too much, but because their minds are not present in the moments they are living. The body is here, but the mind is elsewhere. So they don't truly rest even when sitting still. Because of this, they don't truly love even when they are together. When the mind is pulled in all directions, the heart becomes empty. That emptiness makes us feel cold, lonely, and lost. Even when surrounded by many people, it is only when we return to the present that we feel our heart warmed. There is a very famous ancient story about a king and a hermit. The king asked, "What is the most important time? Who is the most important person? And what is the most important thing to do?" The hermit replied that the most important time is the present. The most important person is the one currently in front of you. The most important thing to do is to perform a wholesome deed. This answer is simple, yet as deep as the ocean floor. The present is most important because it is the only time we can act. The person in front of us is most important because they are the actual karmic connection present in our lives. The person with whom we can sow a wholesome seed right now. And the most important thing to do is a wholesome deed, because only wholesome deeds can sustain our blessings long term. When we understand these three things, we no longer waste our lives in regrets or distant plans. The story of the busy father and the waiting child at the door is clear proof that only the present is real. That father was so busy that he came home late every day. Work swept him away like a strong wind, making him believe he was striving for his child's future. But precisely while he was so concerned about that future, he inadvertently missed the moments his child needed him most. The child would still sit and wait every evening, holding a small book, hoping to hear a story before bed. He waited until his eyes grew heavy, and he unknowingly fell asleep right in front of his room door. The father only had a chance to come home early one evening. When he entered the house, he saw his child sleeping on the floor, head resting against the door, holding the storybook he always hoped his father would read to him. That moment made him stand still. His heart softened like water. He realized that for all those years, he had been chasing something far away and forgotten what was near. From that day on, he decided to sit with his child every evening, even if only for a few minutes, because he understood that the most important person is the one in front of you. The most important time is this moment. Love cannot be reserved for tomorrow, because tomorrow may not be there. In Buddhist teachings, the present moment is called a ksana. A ksana is a very small moment, so small that we can barely perceive it. But it is this ksana that creates human life. A life is not a long stretch, but countless ksanas stacked together. If we live fully in each ksana, we have a complete life. If we miss each ksana, we miss our entire life. That is why the Buddha advised us to always maintain mindfulness. Mindfulness is not something grand. Mindfulness is simply being present in very small things. For example, picking up a glass of water and feeling if it's warm or cool in your hand. You take a sip and feel the water flowing down your throat. You know you are drinking. You know you are alive. Or when walking, you place your foot gently on the ground and feel your foot touching the earth. Each breath becomes a very real life. When you breathe in, you know you are breathing in. When you breathe out, you know you are breathing out. Not going anywhere else, not thinking about anything else, just simply being in that very moment. The truth is that when we are fully present in the current moment, our mind naturally becomes gentle, without much effort. The mind is gentle when we no longer contend for anything in the past, and are no longer tense about the future. The mind is gentle when we no longer want anyone to be like us. The mind is gentle when we see the person in front of us as a truly living human being, with tiredness and very ordinary desires. The mind is gentle when we listen with both our ears and our heart. A person who lives with mindfulness not only liberates themselves, but also brings peaceful energy to those around them. A family with one mindful person is a family with a bright lamp. Wherever that light spreads, impatience diminishes, harsh words lessen, and baseless misunderstandings decrease. Mindfulness is a gift that never grows old. The Buddha taught that the mind is like a boatman. If the boatman is alert, the boat will not sway even in strong waves and winds. But if the boatman is careless, even a gentle breeze is enough to make it lose its direction. When we are fully present, our mind is like a steady boatman. We know what to do and what to stop. We know what to say and what to hold back. We don't get angry without reason because we know that, in the ksana, an emotion arises. It is merely a reaction of a mind not yet clearly seen. When we clearly see it, anger dissipates. It is in that awakening that we have enough compassion not to hurt the person in front of us. The lesson here is very clear. The present is the only gift that life brings us. The past is memory. The future is imagination. Only the present is real, and the only place where we can give love truly and completely. If we don't cherish the present, we will live our entire lives in regret. But if we know how to place our mind in every moment, life becomes as light as a cool breeze. We no longer chase after anything. We simply live, and in that living, we find peace. The message for you is to look back and see who is in front of you today. It could be elderly parents. It could be a young child. It could be someone you love. It could be a companion whose karmic connection you met in life. They are real in this moment. They are looking at you with grateful eyes. They are hoping you will listen to them for a moment. They hope you will give them a smile or a word of inquiry. When you are fully present, you are sowing a seed of blessing. When you cherish them, you are enriching your heart. When you know how to stop to look deeply into this moment, you are taking the first step of spiritual practice in life. The present is not a profound philosophy, but the breath right in your chest. When you drink a glass of water with mindfulness, when you walk with attentive listening, when you hug someone with sincerity, when you speak kind words with earnestness, that is when you are living most fully. And when you live fully, your mind is at peace like a clear, calm lake. In that peace, you can clearly see yourself, clearly see others, and clearly see that life is not as unfamiliar as you think. If this life is a transient realm, then the present is the most beautiful temporary moment. If human connections are hard to keep, then the person in front of you is the most precious karmic connection. If the mind wants peace, then return right now to your own breath. All peace begins from the ksana when you decide to stow and truly live. When a journey comes to an end, people often look back, not out of regret, but to understand that everything they have just been through, whether joyful or sad, has become footprints on their path of growth. This life is inherently constantly changing, not stopping for even a moment. The ancients said, "A human life passes like a white pony glancing past a window. In an instant, it becomes the past." It is in this impermanence that we suddenly understand that life is truly just a transient realm. This body is temporarily hosted. This mind experiences countless ups and downs, and then will return to its inherent stillness. That is as natural as the evening gradually falling. The last light of day recedes behind the mountains and leaves the sky with lingering, soft colors. When we understand that life is a transient realm, we no longer want to contend or cling to things that were not born to belong to us. The Buddha taught that impermanence is not a sad warning, but a reminder for people to cherish what they have in the present. Every inhale and exhale is a gift. Every moment lived in this world is an opportunity to experience. When we realize that, the mind no longer whirls in losses, but gradually settles like a lake after a storm. We will realize a simple truth: peace has never been out there, but always in the way we perceive everything. Someone once asked, "Why does saying life is a transient realm make the mind lighter?" The answer lies in knowing that everything is impermanent. We no longer cling excessively to fleeting things. People suffer largely because they want everything to go their way. They want loved ones to stay forever, work to always be smooth, health to always endure, joy to always be eternal. But does life ever operate according to our wishes? So when the heart wants to cling, life resists. When we want to hold on tight, life pushes us away. And from that, people carry worries, attachments, and suffering. The Buddha taught that the nature of suffering comes from mental clinging. When we let go of a part, we liberate ourselves apart. It's like a hand clenching a handful of sand. The more you try to hold it, the more sand slips through your fingers. Once you open your heart and relax your grip, what needs to stay will naturally stay. What needs to leave will also follow its karmic connection and depart. People often think that living with acceptance, tui duyen, means giving up. That is not true. Living with acceptance is a state of living in harmony with the flow of life. We do our best, but we don't let our minds fall into turmoil. We sow wholesome deeds, but don't obsess over whether the results will come quickly or slowly. We love sincerely, but don't force others to reciprocate according to our wishes. A person who lives with acceptance is not passive, but understands that when a connection comes, they welcome it. When a connection is sufficient, they cherish it. When a connection ends, they gently let go. When the mind knows how to align with nature, the heart naturally finds peace. Throughout life, everyone experiences periods when their mind is strained by pressure, sadness, or disappointment. When things don't go as desired, we often blame ourselves or complain about circumstances. But if we look deeply into these experiences, we will see that they are like silent teachers, teaching us lessons about cause and effect and karmic connections. Some people our age have lost many things. Some people, in just an instant, faced losses for which they were completely unprepared. These things make us realize an important truth. Nothing in this world is certain. Therefore, instead of living in fear, we learn to cherish. Instead of living in anger, we learn to relax. Instead of keeping our minds tense like a guitar string, we learn to untie the knots. I once met a woman in her 40s. Her face was kind, but her eyes held deep weariness. She said that her life was like a boat constantly battered by waves. One thing after another. Job loss, her mother's illness, a crumbling marriage, then her children's declining academic performance. In those months, she could only ask why everything was falling apart on her. She felt life was so unfair. One day, completely exhausted, she visited a temple near her home to find some peace. The venerable monk poured her tea and said, "Everyone in life experiences storms, but it is precisely because of storms that we learn to paddle. The suffering you are experiencing is not punishment, but an opportunity to reflect on your own karmic connections. You have lived too many years resisting everything. You want everything to go your way, without realizing that everything in life operates according to its own karma and connections." When she heard those words, she burst into tears, not out of judgment, but because she felt lighter. That was the day she began to learn to live with acceptance. She didn't give up, didn't quit her job, didn't abandon her family, but she let go of her stubbornness. And from the moment her mind stopped circling in resistance, life began to open new doors. In the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha taught that the human mind is like water. When water is stirred, the reflection of the moon cannot be seen clearly. But when the water settles and is clear, the moon naturally reflects. Our mind is the same. When full of deluded thoughts, we cannot clearly see the nature of life. But when the mind settles, wisdom immediately manifests. Living with acceptance is a way for the mind to settle, so we can clearly see what to keep, what to let go of, and what to simply smile at and let pass. From these stories and teachings, we understand that letting go is not a loss. People often fear letting go because they think they will have nothing left to cling to. But in reality, letting go is simply returning the worries that no longer serve us. It's like cleaning a room, discarding old, unused items. Only when the space is cleared can we make room for new things. The mind is like that room. If it's always filled with resentment, regret, and fear, how can the light of peace enter? Sometimes we think we are holding on to something precious, but with time, we realize it was just a burden. Sometimes we regret a door that is closed, but later we will understand that if that door hadn't closed, we would never have had the chance to see another door open. Letting go is an act of great courage. It helps people return to themselves, return to the light and clear nature of the mind. At the very end of this journey, looking back at all the sections we've covered, we will realize that the consistent spirit has always pointed to one core idea: how to live so that the mind can be at peace. When we understand impermanence, we learn to cherish. When we understand cause and effect, we live wholesomely. When we understand karmic connections, we become compassionate. When we learn to let go, we become free. When we live with acceptance, we find peace. Now, as the final part of this video draws to a close, I want you to imagine a gentle afternoon. The last rays of sunlight falling on the porch. On the table is a steaming cup of tea, its aroma diffusing into the air like an invitation to stillness. In the distance, the temple bell rings, not too loud, but enough to stir the heart. That sound is like a reminder. All storms will pass. All worries will dissipate. We just need to know how to return to our own breath. Try to take a deep breath. Feel the air filling your lungs, and then exhale very gently, like white clouds drifting across the sky. You will feel less heavy than before. Your mind will relax, and your body will also become lighter. At the end of this journey, I just want to send you a simple yet sincere wish. May every step you take from today be as light as walking on a carpet of fallen leaves. May every breath be deep and full of mindfulness. May every day that passes be a peaceful day. I wish you find peace in the simplest things of this life. May you live with acceptance, without giving up, strive without tension, love without attachment, and may your mind always be clear and bright amidst the vastness of life.